We are back for MAAP Part 2 of our practice set, and I am going to go ahead and go into the practice test. To get here, click on the link in the show notes and follow along. Select Subject Math. Select Grade Algebra 1. Select Test 2023 Sample Test Items. Scroll down and choose Start Test. Click on Continue. Click the X to skip the tutorial, and then start the test. We're going to jump to item number 15. So to do that quickly, click on Review on the top left corner and choose 15, and it'll take you here. Here we have 4 functions that we're going to analyze and determine if they're odd, even, or neither. So click the calculator button at the bottom. Let's move it over and resize and type the first function. This is a cubic function. It is neither, actually, and your students may know that right off the bat just by looking at it, because it is not symmetric to the y-axis and it is not symmetric to the origin. If you would like to add the x label to your x-axis and the y label, that might help, and it may not be necessary, but I went ahead and did that by clicking on this wrench. Another way to do these problems is to use the notation that's in the definition. So I went to the second row and typed f of negative x. This is red, so I'm going to change this color by pressing and holding this button and choosing another color. I'll choose blue. Or actually, let me choose black because I think the next one's blue. Okay, now you'll see 2 distinct graphs here. If the function f of x is even, then the graph of f of negative x would also be the same. It would look exactly the same because f of negative x reflects the function over the y-axis. So this is not even because, of course, the graph is not symmetric to the y-axis. So on the next row, I'm going to see if it's odd. One way to determine that is to put negative f of negative x. In other words, reflected over both the x-axis, which is what the negative x inside of the argument is, and reflected over the y-axis by putting a negative in the front. And that function is also not the same as the original red graph. So neither of these work. So I'm going to choose the box that says neither. Now the beauty of this exercise is once I've typed f of negative x and negative f of negative x, then I can just change the function f of x and see if the next function matches, if any of them match. So let's go to the second one in the table. And now you'll notice the blue is not visible, but the red and the black are. So let's turn off both of these. This was the original function. If you turn on the the black one, you will see the distinct 2 functions. So that means it's not even. If it were even, those would be the same graph. So let's turn that one off and turn this one on. Now I can't see the blue one. That's because the red one is on top of it. So turn off the red one, turn on the blue one, and you'll see that blue one is under there. So that's telling you if negative f of negative x is the same graph, that it is odd, and this is an odd function. Again, you could just look at the graph and see that it's symmetric to the origin, but if students are struggling with that, this is one way to determine it without, even if you can't see that. All right, I'll turn both of these off, and let's go to the third function. It's negative x squared minus 7x plus 2. All right, I have a parabola. Let's go ahead and see if it's even. Step 1, turn on this second graph, and you'll see it is not even, because if it were even, these 2 would match. So I'm going to turn that one back off and turn this one on. It is not odd because, again, 2 distinct graphs. If this was odd, the blue and the red would be the same. So let's turn that off, and this one is also neither. Last one, -3. Now there is an absolute value symbol down here on this keyboard, but there's also a vertical bar that you can use on your keyboard right above your enter key. So if you'll hit shift and that button, you can type in your own absolute value symbols that way. All right, so there's the original function. If you click on this one, you don't even see it. That's because it's underneath this one. So turn that one off, and you'll see the black one is right under it. So since these are the same, that means it is even. And so that's one way to determine if a function is even, odd, or neither using your Desmos calculator. Let's go to item 15. The table shows the height of a flower after it was planted, and we're to determine which function represents this growth. So we're going to use our calculator, click the button, move it to the right, and resize it. Now I'm going to add a table, and I'm going to basically recreate the table that you see here. Okay, I have created the table, and you see the data in the graph. Hopefully the students already know that's a linear function, but if they don't, it's okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to type the functions in the calculator, and then we're going to see which one fits these data, and it'll show it in the graph because the points will be on the graph of the function if the function is correct. All right, I did 1 divided by 2 to make my fraction. If you're wondering, the divide key is right on the right side next to your shift key. Shift 6 will make an exponent, and then you'll put your x and then +3. Well, right off the bat, you can see that this function does not look anything like these points. These points are not falling on the line, so answer choice A is not correct. Click on Answer Eliminator, and you can exit out if you want. Okay, the next function was y equals 1/2 x plus 3, so I'm just going to delete this and do 1/2 and then x plus 3. Now that goes perfectly through the points. But the problem is there's two of these. Let me see if I can resize this calculator because I don't want to lose it. 2 of the answer choices have the same equation. Answer choice B has y equals 1/2 x plus 3, and answer choice D. I already know the equation in C does not work, so I could eliminate that one. So the question is, how do we determine if we should choose B or D? Well, the key word here is factors, and the word in D is differences. Factors means you're multiplying by something. Differences means you're adding or subtracting something. So in this case, we're adding 0.5 as we go from one point to the next. 3 to 3.5, you're adding 0.5, you're adding 0.5. So those are not equal factors, but they are equal differences. So the correct answer in this case must be D. The next item is 17. I'm going to type this function into the calculator. So go to the bottom of your screen and click the button Calculator. Put in your function. You can capitalize the P or not. I'm going to not capitalize it. Don't type the comma. If you do, it's going to think it's an ordered pair and get confused. Shift 6 and then put a X for your exponent. Now this graph is not showing up because it's starting way up there at 8,500. And anytime I have a percent increase or a percent decrease question, I usually tell my students, let's look at some data to see what it's doing. So I'm going to create a table, and it says 10 years. I don't think we really need 10 years. So let's do 5 years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's take the Y1 out. I'm just going to type over that P parentheses X1. Now, when I type X and just type a 1, it automatically subscripts that number, so you don't need any special keyboard feature to get that. All right, so the first thing I can tell is that this data is decreasing. I can't see it in the graph though, but look at this little thing down here. You see where if I hover over that, it says zoom fit. When I click that, it's going to create a graph that I can see. And these points all lie on this graph, obviously, because I created the table with the function. So the question is this increasing or decreasing? Well, if the kids don't know it from the graph, they should know it from the actual numbers. It is actually decreasing. So we're going to go ahead and use our answer eliminator, and we're going to cross out answer A because it said increase, and answer C. So now the question is it decreasing 12% or 88%? All right, so one way to do that is to take these values in the table and see what percentage it's actually going down. So I'm going to go back to the top. Let's take the number 7480 and subtract 6582.4. And I'm getting 800. Well, that's not a real big percentage. Maybe they already know the number needs to be a small percentage. But let's say they don't know. You can always divide that number, 897.6, by your starting amount, 7480, and the percentage is 12%. So the correct answer is the amount of fish will decrease exponentially over time by 12% each year. B. The next question we'll look at is question number 19. Devin is training for a marathon. You're given an equation, you're given a table of data, and you're asked to determine which residual plot represents Devin's training for the marathon. Click on the calculator to begin. And what we're going to do is we're going to recreate the table miles run per week. And we're going to create our own regression equation. To create the table, click the plus sign and click Table. On the left side, we'll put the weeks, and these go from 1 to 10. And on the right side, we'll put the miles. Once all the data is in the table, on the bottom left corner of the box where the table is, there's a little zoom fit. If you'll press that, it will create a nice graph in a nice window so you can see the points. So the next thing I'm going to do is create a regression equation. Now this equation will not be the same as the one given in the test, but it's pretty close, and it should help us to narrow down our answer choices or even get the answer without even using the equation we were given. So to create this, type Y and then type a 1. You don't need to type anything special, just type a 1. Then type tilde. Now if you've not found tilde on your keyboard, it's A. You shift and press the button to the left of 1 on your keyboard, and you will see the tilde. It looks like that. Now type M, which stands for slope, X1. It's telling it to use the X values in the table, where X1 is, plus B. And what it's doing here is it's created a regression equation, and it has graphed that regression equation in this graph, and you'll see it there. All right, so down here at the bottom, you will see M is 1.82, and the y-intercept is 2.61, and then there's this button that says plot. So I'm going to move this over so you can see what's going to happen here. When I press that button, it adds another column to my table. It also puts those points on this graph. And these purple points on my graph here are called the residuals. So the question is, which of the tables we are given here match these residuals best? And if you'll look closely, there's only one that's even close. Answer choice B, the first residual was negative, and the second residual was positive. The third one was positive. And see, these signs are all different from the answer choice B. Answer choice C, the numbers are way farther from zero. There's big numbers here. So, and D is the same way. So the only one that really makes any sense is the first one. And you'll see the residual here is 1.0 negative. It says 0.33, it's really 0.26, but that's pretty close. That's because they're using the equation you see here and not the one we generated. But our equation is pretty darn close. So the only answer choice that fits would have to be answer A. So if you've never created residuals in your Desmos, super helpful. This problem would take forever if you were doing it manually, because what you would do is you would calculate the values in the table with this equation, and then you would subtract each one. Maybe it wouldn't take forever. You'd only have to do a few, but I would probably stick with the calculator. If you've never used it, go ahead and try it. The last item we're looking at is question 20. Again, we've got a table of data, and this time we're going to generate a correlation coefficient for the data. To do that, open your calculator, move it over, resize it, and let's type in our data into a table. So click the plus sign, make a table, and type in these data. Once the data is typed into the table, you can click the zoom fit in the bottom left to create a nice graph, and now we can see the data. Does it show a weak or a strong correlation? Well, in general, I wouldn't have the kids answer that until they've created their regression equation. So let's go ahead and do that. Notice the X1 and Y1 are my titles in my column. So I'm going to start with Y1, then tilde, then MX1 plus B. And here's my regression equation, and it has typed in, it's actually graphed the line over the data. So the R value, this is your correlation coefficient. It's 0.8473. That's pretty strong. Think of it like a grade on a test. If a child were to make 85% correct on a test, you'd be pretty happy with that. That's a strong grade. If they make like 50%, that's not good. That would be weak. So in this case, we're going to say this is a strong correlation because our R value is 0.8473. We don't say the data represents a negative correlation because the correlation coefficient is positive, and that's because the graph is rising, the line is rising. The correlation coefficient is approximately 0.85 is the correct answer. It is not negative, but you see where they got that. That was the y-intercept of the line. Again, there were 5 answer choices, and we chose 2 of those answers. That is always the case when there's 5 answer choices. If you haven't already downloaded your copy of the practice set that I created for MAAP, it is still available and it is still free. Head on over to my store. The link to this store will be in the show notes. So when you get there, it's going to look something like this. When you go under My Products, click on Most Recent, and it will pull up my most recent thing, which is this MAAP practice set. Now there's some paid items down here. You can take a look at those if you'd like. But here's the free one for this week. Now this practice set 1 has 10 items in it. And the last 5 items in this practice set we did today, or the last 5 items in this practice set are like the ones we did today. So you will see there's one right here, even, odd, neither. So I've given you one of those. I've given you some correlation coefficient ones so that your kids can practice the skills that you've seen in this video. If you need help or have a question about this, please leave me a comment and I'll get back with you. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Facebook. I try to keep everybody updated on what's happening and when things are coming out so that you can keep a close tabs on what's happening. If you have something you need specifically, maybe you're not in algebra, maybe you need something for geometry. Let me know if there's something you're looking for that you're not finding, because I'm looking for my next few projects. Y'all have a great day.